It was a quiet evening when I returned home from work. I pushed open the front door, expecting the usual sight of my living room. But what I saw stopped me in my tracks. The entire space was eerily empty. My furniture, books, and personal belongings were gone, as if they had never existed. Panic washed over me as I rushed to check each room, only to find them all the same, completely bare. I couldn't understand what had happened. My heart pounded as I raced to my bedroom, hoping to find some sign of normalcy. But even there, everything was missing. The bed, the desk, the clothes, all vanished. It was as if my life had been erased in an instant. But then I heard laughter. A cold, mocking laugh echoed from behind me, and I spun around, my mind racing with fear. Standing in the doorway was my sister-in-law, Kate, her face twisted with amusement. "Look at this place," she said with a smirk. "So neat and clean now, don't you think?" I stared at her, confused and angry. "Kate, what the hell is going on?" I demanded, my voice shaking with frustration. She shrugged nonchalantly, her eyes gleaming with mischief. "Oh, nothing much," she replied. "Why don't you go check the garden?" My stomach churned with unease, but I moved to the window and peered outside. What I saw made my blood boil. There, scattered across the lawn, were all my belongings, thrown haphazardly and soaked from the rain. My laptop, books, clothes, everything lay abandoned in the mud. I turned back to Kate, fury building inside me. "Why would you do this?" I shouted. Kate only shrugged again, clearly enjoying my reaction. "You should really think about getting your own place," she said mockingly. "It's about time you stopped living at your parents' house." Her words stung, but my anger was stronger than my hurt. "How dare you?" I shot back, my hands clenched into fists. "You have no right to touch my things." Kate crossed her arms, unfazed by my outburst. "I'm just trying to help you grow up," she said with a smirk. "You're 30 years old and still living here. Don't you think it's time to move on?" The nerve of her was unbelievable. She wasn't even part of this family until she married my brother, and now she thought she could dictate my life? My mind raced as I considered what to do next. This couldn't go on. For months, I'd tolerated her rude comments and her disrespectful behavior. Ever since she and my brother had moved in after he lost his job, things had become unbearable. At first, I tried to stay calm for my mother's sake, but Kate seemed determined to make life difficult for me. She would criticize me for still living at home, despite knowing that I stayed to care for our mother after her accident. My brother, busy with his job search, was often absent, leaving me to deal with Kate's constant jabs. But now, with my belongings thrown into the mud, it was clear that she had crossed a line. I couldn't let this continue. It was time to confront my brother about Kate's actions and put an end to her torment. I stormed into the kitchen where my brother was sitting, drinking coffee. He looked up as I approached, confusion crossing his face as he noticed my anger. "What's going on?" he asked, setting down his cup. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's Kate," I said, my words sharp. "She threw all my things into the garden. Everything is soaked." His eyes widened in surprise. "What? Why would she do that?" he asked, standing up. I shook my head, still fuming. "She said I should move out, that I'm too old to be living here," I explained. My brother ran a hand through his hair, clearly troubled. "I'll talk to her," he said, but I could tell from his tone that he wasn't sure how to handle the situation. Kate was his wife, after all. Later that night, my brother did speak to Kate, but it didn't change anything. If anything, it made things worse. Kate became more passive-aggressive, her insults disguised as jokes. I did my best to avoid her, but the tension in the house was unbearable. I had been planning to move out for a while, saving up money to buy a place of my own, but now it felt like I needed to speed up the process. I couldn't stand living in such a toxic environment any longer. The following week, I contacted a real estate agent and started looking for apartments. As I toured one property after another, I found myself imagining a life without Kate's constant criticism. A life where I could breathe freely and focus on my career without distractions. But just as I thought I was on the verge of escaping, something unexpected happened. One evening, as I sat in my room, browsing through real estate listings, I heard raised voices downstairs. My brother and Kate were arguing. At first, I tried to ignore it, but then I heard something that made my heart race. Kate was accusing my brother of having an affair. "You think I don't know about her?" she shouted. "I've seen the messages." My brother's voice was strained as he tried to defend himself, but Kate wasn't having it. I crept closer to the door, listening intently. It seemed that their marriage was falling apart, and suddenly I wasn't the only one desperate to escape. The tension between them escalated, and I realized that things were about to get much worse. The next morning, my brother came to me, looking exhausted. "We need to talk," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. He explained that Kate had found out about an old fling he had before they got married, and now she was threatening to leave him. "I don't know what to do," he admitted, rubbing his temples. "Everything is falling apart." I felt a pang of sympathy for him, despite everything. "You need to figure out what's best for you," I told him gently. "If this marriage is making both of you miserable, maybe it's time to consider other options." My brother nodded, but I could see the uncertainty in his eyes. He had always been the strong one, the one everyone looked up to. But now he seemed lost, just like me. In the days that followed, Kate's behavior grew even more erratic. She would leave the house for hours without saying where she was going, and when she did return, she barely spoke to anyone. My brother was at his wits' end, unsure how to fix things. One afternoon, while my brother was out at a job interview, Kate cornered me in the hallway. "You think you're better than me, don't you?" she spat, her eyes burning with anger. I blinked, taken aback. "What are you talking about?" I asked, genuinely confused. "You and your perfect life," she continued, her voice dripping with venom. "You don't have a husband to deal with. You don't have responsibilities. You just sit in your room and work on your little computer projects." Her words stung, but I refused to let her see that. "Kate, I don't know what's going on with you and my brother, but this has nothing to do with me," I said calmly. "I'm just trying to live my life." But Kate wasn't done. "Live your life?" she scoffed. "You don't even have a life. You're 30 years old and still living at home like a child." Her words hit harder than I expected, but I kept my composure. "I'm leaving soon," I told her. "I've already started looking for a place." Kate's face twisted into a cruel smile. "Good," she said. "The sooner you're gone, the better." I stood there, watching her walk away, feeling a mix of anger and relief. My decision to leave was final now. Finally, the day came when I signed the lease for my new apartment. It wasn't anything fancy, but it was mine, and that was all that mattered. As I packed up my things, I couldn't help but feel a sense of liberation. For the first time in years, I was taking control of my life. No more Kate, no more tension, no more living under someone else's rules. When I told my mother about my decision, she was supportive, though I could see the sadness in her eyes. "You've done so much for me," she said, her voice soft. "It's time for you to focus on yourself." I hugged her tightly, promising that I would visit often. My brother, on the other hand, was quiet. He knew that once I was gone, he would be left alone to deal with Kate. The final confrontation came on the day I moved out. As I carried the last box to my car, Kate stood on the porch, watching me with a smug expression. "Leaving already?" she called out, her voice dripping with sarcasm. I didn't respond. I didn't have the energy for another argument. But just as I turned to get into my car, Kate said something that stopped me in my tracks. "Good luck out there," she sneered. "You'll come crawling back soon enough." I froze, gripping the car door handle. Slowly, I turned to face her. "You're wrong," I said quietly but firmly. "I'm never coming back." With those final words, I got into my car and drove away, leaving the house and Kate